From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The governor of the Mexican state of Puebla has been killed in a helicopter crash on Monday. Marta Erika Alonso died along with her husband, Senator and former Governor Rafael Moreno. Local media also reports that the pilot and another person died in the incident. Their helicopter came down not far from the state capital of Puebla City. The cause of the accident is still unknown.
There is not element at this time that could lead us to any conclusion as to the cause outside of the operation of the helicopter.
The control tower of Puebla Airport took notice of the takeoff, and 10 minutes later, as mentioned by the Secretary of Security, communication was lost, and a few seconds later there was a strange noise that we think was the helicopter's explosion.
And Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has sent his condolences to the relatives of the victims. He tweeted his deepest condolences to the relatives of Senator Rafael Moreno Valle and his wife, Governor of Puebla, Marta Erika Alonso. Now an interim governor will be appointed and an extraordinary vote must be held in 3 to 5 months to choose a new one. Mexico has once again denied signing any deal that will allow asylum seekers to wait in the country, while their claims move through the U.S. courts. The government said it has no plans to make Mexico a third safe country. It has also asked for details of the U.S. government plan to send asylum seekers to Mexico while they wait to be processed. The Mexican Foreign Minister also pledged to help end the horror migrants face when trying to cross into the U.S. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security announced a new policy on Thursday banning asylum seekers from entering the U.S. and require them to stay in Mexico. But Washington is yet to provide more information on exactly how the process will work.
Under no condition, officially or de facto, has Mexico accepted the status of a safe country for people to return to our territory whilst they search for entry to the United States. An agreement on a safe country status is an international commitment that is based on a bilateral agreement. Mexico does not accept, it will not accept, signing a treaty under such circumstances. A safe country agreement would mean that any migrant from any place in the world that is passing through Mexico towards the United States for asylum will return as a condition for their claim. That is why we are not accepting an agreement of this kind.
A yearly tradition for separated families continues this year at the U.S.-Mexico border, under the shadow of the ongoing migrant crisis. The see-through fence separating Tijuana and San Diego has long been a popular meeting point for loved ones who can spend the holidays together. While families on both sides of the border usually meet through the fence, this year it's been harder to get up close. Increased security has forced many to talk to their relatives through their mobile phones or simply wave from afar.
We've come to see my niece. We came from Oaxaca to see her. It's been 15 years since we last saw her, and since it's close to Christmas, we wanted to speak to her.
During the season when families come together, we've come all the way here, so that we are not alone. To be with them is very special. My brother also lives here in Tijuana, so I also met with him.
The body of Jacqueline Cal has been returned to her relatives in Guatemala. The 7-year-old girl died early this month while in the custody of U.S. Border Patrol agents. Jacqueline and her father were part of a group of migrants who handed themselves over to authorities after walking to the U.S.-Mexico border. While in custody, young Jacqueline developed a high fever and died 2 days later. Her body arrived at the village of San Antonio de Cortez early on Monday, where relatives have laid her to rest.
We will take her remains to my home and we will mourn. We will all be together.
A girl went out smiling, happy, and today she returned without life.
Our correspondent in Guatemala, Santiago Boton, attended the funeral service for the 7-year-old.
The funeral vigil for Jacqueline Cal is underway at her home in the small community of San Antonio de Cortés, about 350 kilometers north of Guatemala City. Her coffin arrived just after 5 a.m. on Monday. The Foreign Ministry did not allow Jacqueline's relatives to accompany the hearse from the airport and were asked to wait here for her body to arrive. Meanwhile, members of the tight-knit community have gathered here to say their final farewell to the 7-year-old girl.
Brazilians from all walks of life are making sure that former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva isn't celebrating Christmas alone. Hundreds of supporters are holding a vigil outside the federal police headquarters in Curitiba, where the former president is being held. Supporters are singing Christmas carols while hosting religious ceremonies and a Christmas dinner. They are also sending holiday messages to Lula. And Lula has sent a Christmas letter to the vigil. In the letter, Lula thanks the hundreds of supporters who left their homes to spend Christmas in front of the federal police headquarters. He said that because of them, he won't be alone this holiday and told supporters to stay strong as the struggle for a better world continues. Experts are warning that another tsunami could strike Indonesia. There are concerns as Anak Krakatoa continues to erupt. Authorities remain vigilant on the ongoing activity of the volcano. Meanwhile, rescue teams are continuing to look for survivors. The tsunami provoked by the volcano hit the Sonda Strait on Saturday and has left at least 429 people dead. Meanwhile, humanitarian workers are warning that clean water and medicine supplies are running out. Fears about a public health crisis rise as survivors fill shelters. Thousands of people have been displaced from their homes. The government of Ecuador has issued a warning for coastal towns because of storm surges over the weekend. The alert will remain in place until December 26 in the provinces of Esmeraldas, Manabí, and El Oro. While no casualties or injuries have been reported, the surges damaged homes and infrastructure along the coast. And authorities have reopened Catania Airport on the island of Sicily after it was closed by an eruption of the Italy's Mount Etna on Monday. The airport will see limited traffic, operating 4 flights an hour. More than 100 tremors have shaken the area surrounding the volcano in the past week. Mount Etna is the highest volcano in mainland Europe and is considered one of the most active volcanoes in the world. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The State Council in Chile presented a charge against the 4 police officers involved in the murder of Mapuche Camilo Cartillanca. The legal action against Patricio Sepúlveda, Carlos Alarcón, Raúl Ávila, and Braulio Valenzuela labels charges of homicide and obstruction of justice. The obstruction is based on the fact that the 4 former policemen claimed that there were no audiovisual records of the incident. But the State Council considers the delivery of new images last week to be a key piece in the investigation. Chile's first monument to sexual diversity has been defaced just 10 days after its erection. The plaque was engraved with a message of hope and inclusivity. LGBTI liberation group Mobile Age condemned the vandalism on Twitter. They say the act is not the Chile that they want and demanded an end to hate attacks. Activists have requested camera footage from municipal authorities. Osvaldo Bayer, an Argentine historian, writer, and leading example in the defense of human rights, died on Monday at the age of 91. He leaves behind a legacy of permanent political commitment to humanism and peaceful combat of injustice. He was an anarchist, but above all, a defender of human rights. He is known for his work with the mothers of Plaza de Mayo and indigenous people. Members of popular movements in Argentina have gathered in front of the Congress campaigning for lands, robbers, and work. At the demonstration, they held a dinner for homeless people. The meeting was promoted by different social organizations and movements which form a part of the Popular Economic Confederation. They made the call to spend Christmas Eve in front of the Congress. The Venezuelan Ministry of Foreign Affairs has issued a statement rejecting the communique by Washington about the violation of Venezuelan territorial waters. It says that the U.S. must cease its illegal and insolent intervention in the affairs of Venezuela and deal with its problems. Palladino is sent by Pompeo to make a fool of himself before Christmas by questioning Venezuela's sovereign and peaceful acts. This year, Cuba marked the end of an era when it elected its new president. Miguel Díaz-Canel committed to lead the fight against imperialism as Cuba faces renewed tensions with the United States.
Mano para arriba, mi gente. Mano para arriba, que nadie se me suba.
Street vendors make their living, and the streets of Havana are busy as always. This is Cuba. More than 50 years after the triumph of the Cuban Revolution and the economic blockade imposed soon after by the United States. But business must go on. After the death of Fidel Castro, the leader of the Cuban Revolution, Cubans have an even bigger challenge ahead. Fidel's brother Raúl announced it would be his last term in office as president of Cuba during a meeting of the National Assembly, and that following a democratic process, Cubans would elect their new president.
When the National Assembly of Popular Power convenes on April 19, 2010, I will have finished my second and last mandate at the head of the Cuban state and government. And Cuba will have a new president.
People across Cuba voted in these elections. After taking part in several assemblies, they were able to propose and then choose their candidates. Children guarding the ballot boxes held up their hands in a signature gesture to show that a vote had been held. Expectations were high for the new leaders about to be elected.
I want someone, anyone, to lead this country well. And the most important thing is good leadership. People who are going to protect Cuba.
The name of Miguel Díaz-Canel emerged as the favorite to win the election. At 58, he had served as Minister of Education and was part of the State Council of Cuba. He'd been a vice president and had experience working with youth groups in the island.
We are defending our process, the revolution that continues to be threatened and attacked. In the middle of a complex situation in the region and as we change our economic system.
Díaz-Canel was elected on April 19 and was the first person to be considered for the position who was born after the Cuban Revolution. He started working on implementing new economic reforms demanded by the Cuban people as they continue to face the hardships of decades of economic blockade.
He's doing what our commander Fidel Castro taught us. He's meeting with the people and getting to know what they think and how they live. I was able to shake his hand and I'm happy and grateful.
He's a man who shows that he is connecting with the people, that he is loved, that he is reaching out and getting to know the problems of the people, the things that worry them the most. And that's what we should see in him.
And with a new leadership came other changes. In another democratic process, Cubans gathered in neighborhoods, unions, student groups, and others to propose changes to their constitution. Everyone could take part, inside and outside the island, and millions put forward their own proposals. Díaz-Canel also led the debate inside the assembly, where the ideas of all citizens were taken into consideration and applied to the new constitution.
This exercise of direct participation by the people has the highest political relevance and will be another proof that the revolution is based on the most genuine democracy. And it's a major responsibility for all our people to participate actively and with awareness in the discussion of the Constitution of the Republic. All Cubans can express their opinions and contribute to achieving a constitutional text that reflects the present and the future of our country.
All across the 15 provinces of Cuba, issues of the economy, politics, and society were up for discussion, and a few topics stood out. The main one was to change how the Constitution defines marriage, no longer as a partnership between a man and a woman, and LGBTI groups were thrilled.
We are working with the state, with the Communist Party and society to educate people to change their minds and to make progress on these issues and their rights.
But in the international arena, Díaz-Canel still has to deal with the U.S. blockade. He led the vote at the United Nations, which year after year denounces it and calls on the U.S. to end it once and for all. And he denounced U.S. violations of human rights. But only 2 countries voted against it, the United States and Israel.
Cuba is proud of its human rights record, which denies any manipulation against it. On the contrary, the United States lacks the moral to give lessons, as much less in this manner.
In the end, the Cuban people will continue on their own path. The authorities say they expect growth of up to 2% in the Cuban economy. With tourism one of the main sources of income, they will continue singing and looking ahead to a better future and to the days when there's no more blockade and no more injustice.
Money, serio, money, money.
Moving on, the Catholic Church in the Democratic Republic of Congo has called on the government to keep its promise and ensure that free and fair elections are held on December 30. During his Christmas address, the Archbishop of Kinshasa, Fridolin Ambongo, said failure to do so will put the country's fragile peace at risk. And Congolese people are celebrating Christmas despite the tense atmosphere caused by the upcoming presidential election. Residents in the city of Goma buy last-minute decorations and toys while discussing the possible electoral outcome. Presidential, legislative, and provincial elections had been scheduled for Sunday, diffusing a 2-year crisis over the future of President Joseph Kabila.
Politics is part of life. Like us as Christians, Christianity is life and everything gets tangled up. We pray to God that it will be done in peace.
Pope Francis has held the traditional Christmas Mass at the Vatican. During his Christmas Eve message, the Pope criticized the insatiable greed of today's consumerism. Thousands of believers have gathered in St. Peter's Basilica to listen to the Christmas Mass. 1.3 billion Catholics across the world are celebrating the day of Jesus' birth.
Then, as we enter the stable, sensing in the tender poverty of the newborn child a new fragrance of life, the odor of simplicity, let us ask ourselves, do I really need all these material objects and complicated recipes for living? Can I manage without all these unnecessary extras and live a life of greater simplicity?
Dozens of Yellow Vest protesters gathered on the Champs-Élysées in Paris this Christmas Eve. They demanded the resignation of President Emmanuel Macron. Protesters also want to have more say in the institution's decision-making. Several police vans surrounded the Arc of the Triomphe to prevent protesters from approaching the monument.
Why did they come here? Because Macron does not want to resign, and we have had enough. Voila, Macron. I don't know. Talks, talks, and talks.
More news in a minute. Stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. Hundreds of people attended the Christmas Eve midnight Mass in the Church of the Nativity, believed by Christians to be the birthplace of Jesus. Among them was Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. The Mass was held in the Israel-occupied West Bank town of Beltman. Thousands of tourists and worshippers visit the Holy Land during the Christmas period.
I want to greet you and all your delegation that you came. As according to tradition, you are part of the status quo now, you cannot avoid it. Tradition to celebrate with us this Christmas night. We are very happy to have you with us for what you represent.
Dozens of migrant children have celebrated Christmas at sea on the Open Arms rescue boat. The Spanish charity has released a video of children receiving Christmas gifts. 300 migrants are on the boat after being rescued off the coast of Libya on Saturday. They are currently making their way to the Spanish port of Algeciras after the vessel was refused entry by Malta and Italy. A United Nations team is visiting Yemen's Red Sea port city of Hureira. The UN Joint Committee is tasked with overseeing the implementation of the ceasefire. Houthi representatives and delegates of the Saudi-backed government accompanied the committee. The ceasefire began on December 18, but the two rival forces have blamed each other for violations of the agreement.
If you read the agreement, the timelines are very tight. That means that the ceasefire started on the 18th of December at midnight, which is extremely important that both sides are holding that, and that both sides show not the blame you and he blames him and everybody blames everybody. Breaking a ceasefire is going back and not forward.
At least 43 people have been killed after a gunman stormed a government compound in Kabul in Afghanistan. 2 car bombs exploded in front of the complex and gunmen entered immediately after. This led to a heavy exchange of fire with security forces. The compound houses offices for the Ministries of Public Works, Labor and Social Affairs. So far, no one has claimed responsibility for the attack.
They made a hole in the wall and entered the ministry. Their target was the Ministry of Public Works. They were inside, and our blocks were related to finance and procurement, but they set fire to our blocks. When I realized that they might kill me, I jumped from the 4th floor.
And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find at our website at telsurenglish.net. And for our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on the StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Merry Christmas and thank you for watching.